Hello, this is Greg Allison with Green Greg's Garden and Worm Farm, coming to you today with a special guest, Curtis Stone. Curtis Stone is the Dean of Urban Farming. Hi, Curtis. How you doing?
I'm good, Greg. How are you?
In fact, Curtis is so good. He's written an excellent book that I highly recommend. I'll try to get a link below on this channel. It's called The Urban Farmer. Now, you know a book is a good book when it's used. And look, you see I got one or two little bookmarks in here, right?
Right on.
Color tabs. And if you look through here, it's pages are well worn. You'll see marking on the pages.
Oh, yeah. Making notes in there. Oh, good.
I got corner tabs folded over. When a book is well worn and well used, it's a good book.
Yeah. That's a good sign, man.
Go-to book for urban farmer, because what Curtis Stone has done is he has come up with this technique where he was on a quarter of an acre from lawns of people he rents in his town. Tell us where you live, Curtis.
Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada.
Now get that, British Columbia, Canada. That's way up north.
Yeah, not too far. We mostly live by the U.S. border up here.
Compared to where I'm at in the subtropics down here. Although there was a period I lived 2 years in Alaska, I would have called you a southerner back in those days. Well, all that aside, what he's been able to accomplish is amazing, because he mostly rents other people's lawns. And although he started a new farm project, if he wants to tell us about it, he can do that. But he by renting other people's lawns, he developed techniques for making up to $100,000 a year on a quarter of an acre. A little bit of his yard, neighbor yards, and it's amazing what he's been able to do. And he does it by picking high value crops that he can crop maybe 2 to hopefully 4 times a year. Mm-hmm. And just he's got a specific formula for how he does it. He walks you through it in the book and how to really turn it into maximum profit per each 50-foot long bed, 25, whatever you can handle, 2,500 foot, but he does it on basically 50-foot beds. Like you get like equivalent of 63 50-foot beds at one time, and you're making like $1,600 a bed per year or something like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But what more is he even tells you how to start a farm with like $5,000. Imagine that, $5,000 to start a farm. So when you look at that, Curtis has made major accomplishments in his life. He used to be an avid bicyclist, where he rode way down. How far south did you ride? All the way down?
Tijuana.
Wow, Tijuana. And back up into British Columbia.
Yeah.
And he was farming and delivering crops from his bicycle, a little trailer behind his bicycle. Now, I used to run 12 miles every other day in my day, and I used to also ride about maybe 20 miles when I cut my running out from getting plantar fasciitis, but nothing like Curtis has done. Of course, I'm a couple of years older than Curtis now too, so I don't think I could do that. But he's definitely got his credentials, and I encourage everyone to check his channel out. He is an amazing guy. But he's made a recent call, something that really caught my attention. Now, listen, I've been watching his channel for years. He's one of my favorites. In fact, if you look on my channel and the suggested channels, his is right up there. It's been from the get-go. Because I started my channel originally to be an urban farming channel, but everybody wanted to know about my power grid defense conferences I ran and some other things. I started talking about power grid defense. Next thing I know, I had a prep stutter channel, which totally changed the character of this channel real fast. So, Curtis, I cover a lot more than just farming. In fact, I mostly cover prepping type topics now, it seems, and I cover a lot of things going on in the world to keep people aware. Tell people they got to keep their eyes wide open and head on the swivel. Well, you've stepped into that, Curtis. You started talking about that, and I've seen your evolution in this topic over time. As you become more independent and more aware of self-sovereignty and the value of it through farming and your small business, I've seen you talk more and more along those lines. I've seen this evolution develop. And I think it happens to anyone when you get your own business and you discover what really makes the world work. You become aware. I mean, there's this old adage: if you're not a liberal when you're a kid, you don't have a heart. If you're not conservative when you're older, you don't have a brain. I'm not talking I'm not talking left, right.
Yeah, exactly.
We're really talking about self-sovereignty, independence.
That's right.
And what he did is he come up with this video. He said a call to what do you call it? A call. I'm getting brain locked here.
A call to regenerate the world, or something like that.
Yes, a call to regenerate the world. I can't read my own handwriting here. My own chicken scratch. A call to regenerate the world. Now, in his call to regenerate the world, he's hit on a lot of themes that I've been hitting on for months in this channel. And I said, wow, I got to reach out to Curtis now. This is really, I've been wanting to get Curtis on this channel for a long time. That's been a great dream of mine because he's such an accomplished individual. But this people, you need to listen to him on this. So maybe hit the high points on this, Curtis. We'll kind of just have a conversation about it, kick it back and forth. You talked about 5 areas that we needed to start with, and you were starting with politics and medicine. You went down a list, and you
yeah. So I mean, you know what? After doing that, I realized there's certainly more I could have put in there, but I was all jazzed up that day, and I just went and did that. Education could have gone in there easily, but you know, politics, the legal system, maybe those could have been the same thing. You know, maybe I could have made it 5 if I condensed those and then but politics and the legal and law are actually different. You know, I got a copy of Black's Law's 7th edition behind me. I'm deep into the legalese. You know, I've been reading legal documents for a solid year now.
Wow.
And really went down the rabbit hole. And I'm not in the conspiracy theory stuff at all. I've been into that shit forever, 20 years, but really into reading legal documents, reading acts and statutes, and you know, foundational law in this fake country that I live in, Canada, which isn't a country, it's the corporation. But you know, really got into that.
And we all are now.
We were all in this Admiralty maritime jurisdiction thing, right? But you know, I felt inspired to, you know, it's been a really interesting year, as you are well aware of, Greg. I see you posting and talking about things, and we're along a similar wavelengths. But it's like everything that the elites have been trying to do for the last 100 years, they've basically just thrown at us this year. And it's become so apparent. And you know, you see people protesting and all this stuff, people waking up. And the thing that I'm really starting to see, and I've seen this for a long time, is just this thinking of, when can we get to a point where we don't have to protest for every single damn issue? Why is it that it's endless, that we have to constantly fight this upstream battle against this massive political and legal system that continually subjugates us? And it doesn't subjugate us all equally, right? It's by its nature, it's an unequal system, and it's a shitty system.
Curtis, it's worse than that. They play us. They use the fact that we protest against us to divide us against each other.
Absolutely. It's this continual compartmentalization, and you see this with the race war right now. You know, the whole Rona hoax thing didn't work as well as they wanted it to. And then people were starting to wake up to that, like, wow, look at this tyranny at our doorstep. Wow. And then, wow, race war, boom, throw that out there. Mainstream media doubling down, compartmentalize. And I don't think it's working, actually. I'm quite optimistic that a lot of people are going to wake up. But so, you know, I was inspired to make this video addressing these 5 things. And it was the legal system, the political system, the economic system, the medical system, and what was the other one I had in there? The agriculture. Mm-hmm. And you know, they all connect in one way or another. But the basic thesis that I made is that it's kind of a thing that I woke up to once I started really reading law. You know, really getting into definitions in Black's Laws, and realizing that the legal system is essentially dead. You know, and I actually I have to correct myself, because some people really pointed out in my video, oh, Curtis, you're wrong about the word corpus. So I referenced how the person, the all caps name, your name in all capital letters is a corporation, which it is. That's written in the law. But I did incorrectly compare that to a corpse, as in something dead. Now, that was just a slight deviation from what I was trying to get at, but it didn't change the core of what I was saying, is in that the system that we have and all those things, legal, political, economic, so on and so forth, they're all based on this lifeless thing. Agriculture is sterile. The medical system is sterile. the political and legal system are essentially dead because they create us into these fictions that aren't alive. We're alive, man and woman, we're alive. And we need to start putting together that. And I think the legal and political stuff needs to fit into it just as much as, you're familiar with regenerative agriculture and that whole movement. I believe that movement has to start embracing the sovereignty movement. These things have to come together. We have to bring it all into the world of the living. We are man and woman created by the divine creator, whatever that is for you. It doesn't matter to me. That's a minor detail, but the idea is that it's love. It is infinite. It is the creator. And we have to bring that into life. And we have to bring the living man and woman back onto the land. And I mean that metaphorically and literally, bringing us onto the land in the terms of we need to connect with our agriculture.
Let's key on that point for a moment. Let's hang on it. Bring us back to the land. Get us close to the land, because there's several ways to look at. We're from the earth. We draw from the earth. We get
That's
more
right.
from that. We forget that. People in cities think that food comes out of a package in a grocery store, off the shelf out of a refrigerator, and they forget that it's part of the biology that comes from the earth, from the dirt.
Yeah, and this is even a sort of a thesis that I proposed in my book, I wrote that book, I think it's 6 years ago now, but I think it was 6 years ago I wrote that.
Right off the bat.
Yeah, and that I actually recognized even then, and I wasn't into this legal stuff as much as I am now in there, but I recognized even then the disconnection that the average man or woman has from the land is part of the reason why agriculture has run amok so much. And there's a lot of complicated reasons why that exactly is. But it's a big part of the reason. If you're not connected to where your food comes, you don't understand where it is, and then you don't really recognize malpractice in something. And it's the same with the medical system, actually, too. And people just go, give me the drug, give me the drug. What it really comes down to, Greg, the more I think about it, the more I talk through this, is that it comes down to a lack of responsibility. In every respect, that could actually,
they don't want us to feel responsible. They're trying to remove that from us too, and that's one of the biggest faults of all. We are responsible for ourselves and our actions, but they want us to forget that and make us totally subservient.
Because big daddy government's going to provide everything for us, right? And in a way, it all kind of comes back to the agricultural model, which by its nature is not sustainable in many ways. I've had this kind of conversation going back and forth with Jack Spirko. Him and I are going to turn this whole idea into a series of podcasts with a few other guys that we're going to do this as sort of a mastermind thing. But
I wouldn't mind jumping in on that when you go there.
Jack made a really cool idea or proposed an interesting point, which I believe he's correct on, is that we have to get rid of this idea of agriculture, actually, because agriculture is a pyramidal thing. It's really about the control of nature. It's really about control. And that's one thing that our elites in our society have brainwashed us to believe as well, is that we need to control everything all the time. And it's a dead end. It's like the vaccine thing. What are you going to get? You're going to get a vaccine for every single virus that is manifested in nature. It's infinite. These things constantly manifest themselves. And so I think it's, it basically my thesis is, I'm still crystallizing it, but is that we have to move away from this control, this dead system, this system of no accountability and no responsibility, into absolute living world of responsibility. And I think
organic system,
absolutely,
from the bottom roots up the street, widely decentralized.
Absolutely.
Let's get back to that again. I have done videos myself, 2 or 3, asking if modern monoculture agriculture was sustainable, and my conclusion is no, for several reasons. But as I mentioned, I have done 2 power grid defense conferences here in Alabama.
Nice.
And so let me tell you what that means for sustainability. You may be aware that the solution for all our problems, according to the powers that be, is that you put everybody in rack and stack shipping containers next to the railroad track on the road to the smokestack, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
But they want to take us all in the cities. Forever wild. The country is forever wild. You can't even go out in the country. You can't even go out in the woods. People psychologically need a nature bath. But they want to take us off the land. You're talking about putting us on the land, leaving us on the land. They want to take away your property rights and ensure you can't be on the land, because one of the last sovereign groups of people is the small farmers. They don't want anybody to be sovereign. They want everybody to be in the system, sucked up to the powers that be, totally dependent.
Yep.
But the thing is, the failure of that model, they call that sustainability. They say that's the solution to all these problems.
That's right.
Here's why it will absolutely fail. Absolutely fail, completely, utterly fail. If the whole world's dependent on it, the whole world will absolutely starve to death in its entirety. Because when the power grid goes down, I'm not saying if, I'm saying when the power grid goes down, then how are you going to be shipping stuff the world around? All your networks collapse. You won't have fuel to pump to run the ships, the boats, the trucks, the cars. So they've got these frankenfood factories in the cities growing food that is somewhat less than desirable to eat. It's going to be detrimental to your health, and it won't even be able to produce it anymore, because you won't even be able to get barons to run the rollers for all this stuff to operate, because when your supply chain goes down, everything unravels. Power is needed. It's the linchpin of the entire system. Power is required to run the computers that you make your orders on. Everything is done via computer these days, and internet. It is required to, there's no books like we used to have. You have to have it to pump water. You have to have it to pump fuel. You have to have it for the boats, the cars, everything to run. It's everything. It is. We are absolutely 100% dependent on power. Also, with that, we won't have problems with not just the nuclear reactors, but mainly their spent fuel rod pools. I've gone into that in some detail in other videos. But and I say when, because eventually, if something else don't get us, the sun will. And with our weakening magnetosphere of the Earth, we are very much vulnerable to that right now. Very super vulnerable to even a low-level coronal mass ejection from the sun, a smaller solar flare taking out the entire power grid around the world. If we have a war, and let's admit things aren't exactly rosy between countries like India and China, the United States and China, and countries like Iran, there are relationships that are somewhat less than absolutely lovey-dovey in the world today. Amongst powers that have weapons that can generate an electromagnetic pulse. And there's also people or the groups who would like to just go around, you can take out these transformer stations by kinetic attack. That means direct attack. And small groups could do that also. The transformers take 18 months to receive after you put the order on your loading dock, providing you have infrastructure that's working, which you won't have, and much longer than installed. By then, 9/10 of the population would be dead, discounting what's going on in the nuclear power plants, so it'll be even worse. So we're in a precarious situation, but if you put everybody in the rack and stack by the railroad track on the way to the smokestack cities that they so desire, you're going to have no resiliency at all. There is no sustainability. It's absolutely unsustainable. Their dream, the vision outlined by the United Nations that you can find on their websites called 2030, is absolutely unsustainable.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it runs into the same problems that we see in agriculture, and that is my sort of main area of expertise, I guess you could say. And
it's a good area.
Everything in nature tries to take down any form of centralization, and perhaps if we pull the lens back far enough, that's what we're witnessing right now. Maybe this whole, I don't know how long it's been, because history is written by the victors, so who knows if anything we know about history is actually correct. But let's just assume, for the sake of the discussion, the last 2,000 years are as we've been taught for the main part, and maybe we're running to the tail end of this last 2,000-year experiment of centralization and continual growth, and this whole experiment of making human beings, or men and women, I prefer the term, chattel, and this whole obsession with control and endless greed. And maybe this whole thing is coming to a close. That's part of me, trying to be optimistic about a lot of the crazy things that are going on in the world. But yeah, I mean, it's we've got no shortage of challenges right now, but I'm quite optimistic, actually, that those that are awake will mobilize, and I'm seeing it in everybody I know. Really, I am. I mean, I've been preparing for this for the last 12 years. When I first rode my bike down to Mexico and started to really think about what I need to do in this world. And, I was a rock and roll jazz musician, and it was the last thing the world needs is another great guitar player. And so ever since I took that step, I feel like everything I've done up until now has brought me to this point where I'm prepared. And so I'm very happy to be in this place. I'm happy to know people like you and people who are out there working on solutions and making stuff and trying to make the world a better place, and trying to give people some meaning. And everything about that model that you painted is exactly correct. This whole sustainable development is the word that they use a lot. And I've been a guy who bought into that bullshit for a long time, and been to my share of conferences. I still get invited to some of these conferences, not as many as I used to ever since I started talking about climate change and stuff like that. But yeah, it is anything but sustainable, and it is essentially moving the farm up to the man and woman. That's the more I've really explored all this stuff and really gotten into the legal system.
Tell people about Black's Law. That was the precursor before we had case law.
Well, Black's Law is your sort of this is your ultimate legalese dictionary. And one thing you got to learn is, if you want to know who you are in this world, and you want to know who the system's trying to make you to be and who you actually are, you really got to know your definitions, because all these words you think what they mean something else. A classic word that is so misused in common parlance, and they trick you this way in legalese, is the word includes. Because you'll say something like, so in legalese, the word includes means that and only that. It means the exclusion of everything else. That's what includes means in legalese. But you'll hear people say things like, oh, I got this and this and this, and it includes that. What you actually said is that it only includes that. Everything else you said before that was not included. So, a really interesting one is the definition of Canada in the Interpretations Act of Canada. And it says, this is what it says pretty much verbatim. It says, for greater certainty, Canada is the internal and territorial waters in and around the landmass known as Canada.
Wow.
So what is Canada? According to their definition, it's water. That's literally all it is. That's actually why your Statue of Liberty is in the ocean too.
Right.
Because you guys are under. It's the same thing in the U.S. But the beautiful thing about the U.S. is the U.S. has a dual system. The U.S. has a de jure constitutional system, but it also has the Washington D.C. corporation that runs the whole system. I have a lot of hope for the U.S. because it looks like there's some interesting things happening there that could be moving against the globalist agenda. Hopefully I hope for the best. I plan for the worst.
Always tell people that.
Yeah.
I always tell people that. So let's see your shirt. Your shirt looks interesting.
Oh yeah. This is your favorite politician.
Peyton.
Yeah.
Hey, I've been to Moscow. It was 10 years ago. In March of 2010, actually. I rather enjoyed that trip, by the way.
Yeah.
People there.
Well, it's not what it used to be, right? I mean, they've really changed things around there.
Yeah, they made the mistake of dumping communism now. Some people hate them.
Yeah, exactly. But I've seen a lot of clips of Putin telling the New World Order to go fuck themselves. So hey, Sorry for the swearing, but
All right,
that.
I try not to use that kind of language on my channel.
Yeah, sorry.
Young people watch my channel.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, I'm optimistic. The fact that she's not your president is really, really good. Trump's not the perfect guy, and
Oh,
but at the same time, I don't have. See, here in Canada, our political system is so deeply corrupted that I don't even engage it anymore. The whole system, the legal system, the bar association, all of that, it's all based on Roman civil law, the law merchant system, they also call it. That system is corrupt to the core, because in that system, it creates turns everybody into a person, which is, if you go and look it up, go up and, I don't want to dig it up here in real time in Black's Law, but if you look up person in Black's Law, it'll say, in common parlance, a person is a human being. But in legal terms, a person is a corporation, a labor union, blah, 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 a bunch of fictions. And that's the
corporations were created, by the way, so they could do that.
well, yeah, and this is I think this problem needs to be addressed just as much as all the other problems, because at the fundamental level, until that changes, there is no freedom. There is no sovereignty. Like, we have there's layers of sovereignty, like you're very correct in saying that, they want to push the small farmers off the land. That's a trend happening around the world. I've done consulting in dozens of different countries, and I know people all around the world, and that's the trend that's happening everywhere. And doesn't matter how green the government says they are, kicking small farmers off land is an absolute priority, because that removes a layer of sovereignty. And there's all these layers. I often like to think about things as, there's your true divine self, the true spirit that was born from your mother's water, coming into this world on the land. That's the human essence, as purest form as we know when you're born. I just had a son 7 months ago, and these pure innocent babies, as they grow, they add these layers of complexity that are like a layer of an onion, that in a way remove them from their true essence. And we do that in all kinds of different ways. Social media is probably one of the last layers of this onion, making our lives ever more complex and removing us from our true divinity. But the legal system does this as well, and we don't have any rights. Like, and this is the thing. When are we ever going to stop about fighting for the next injustice from the government? We'll never do it until we address this thing, that we need to be man and woman on the land, not a person in admiralty law that is basically a fiction. Because you've got God, then you've got man. Man created law. Law should be working for man. That's how it should be. But we've created, in that legal system, we've created persons, and then those are underneath the law, and they're controlled by law. And you could talk forever about how unjust the legal system is, putting people in prison for no crimes, no victim, and it's never going to change. And people think that there's going to be some kind of justice from this UN system, this globalist system. I mean, wake up, folks. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse.
Well, see, a lot of people believe that you can only have justice to a big centralized government, because they can only that way do you remove all the layers of prejudice or whatever. I know where the thinking comes from. The problem is that there's three things that determine the development of human power. I consider them axioms, and 3 points determine a plane in geometry. If you've got a stool, you have 3 legs at the same level, or you fall over, right? So it's the same principle. So they are one stated by Lord Acton: power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The other is the golden rule, which I consider the original golden rule. Well,
yes,
it's the corrupt golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rule. Not my favorite golden rule, but that's one of them. And then there's the earth and a feather flock together. So people are sucking up to the ones with the power and the money. And so you get a nexus of this formation of these 3 principles, and it's going to lead to corruption in any system over time if you don't have some way to eliminate it. Now, in the United States, the founding fathers tried to come up with a means to slow that down. And a lot of the Constitution is all about limiting the power of government. I mean, it's a big document written about trying every way it possibly can to limit the power of government. And we found loopholes and ways around it, mainly through ignoring what it really says. We don't really operate by that in this country even today.
No,
So,
not at all. The judges will kick you out of court for citing the Constitution. And I've seen that. I've followed enough of these sovereign guys in the U.S., and I've listened to hundreds of hours of court stories. And
in reality, we are sovereign. It's just that the government and the powers that be ignore that. But we have to take our sovereignty back.
Well, that's right. And it's not even so much that we have to take it back, because we never lost it. It's just we have to fully realize it and express it in our essence and in our day-to-day lives. And you know, it's a big challenge, you know. It's a complicated thing, but I think there's so many parts to it that can get us there. And one of those that's very important is that we need to be on the land.
Yes.
And I mean that legally, and I mean that physically. So by physically, I mean, in order to be connected to nature, which is part of our divinity, I believe, is that we need to be on the land, and we need to be a participant in our food production, our ecosystems, and we need to live in harmony with nature. Because if we don't live in harmony with nature, we don't live on the land, we can't be in harmony with nature. Because if we're all jammed in cities, which are essentially monocultures, a giant city is essentially a monoculture farm. That's really what it is. Call it what it is. And it falls victim to the same things that try to take down monoculture farms in nature. But then we need to be on the land in nature, and that means that we need to get off the boat and get off the water and onto the land, because in this legal system we have, we're all lost at sea. And that's why, you know, the definition of Canada is it's the internal and territorial waters, is because this whole Roman civil law system, was law merchant system they call it, was set up from the Holy Roman Empire to charter vessels across the Mediterranean to deliver goods and move back and forth commercial goods. It's a commercial system that we're controlled by. And maybe that commercial system isn't so bad for transporting goods. The problem is we're not goods. We're men and women. But our legal system has us written as goods. Even you look up the legal definition of a driver, and actually this is a really good one, because my friend, him and I work on this stuff a lot together. This is a good one. So he texted me the where is it? I just lost it. He texted me I'll pull it up here. The legal definition of driver is quite amazing, and I'll pull it up here on my phone because it's better than where is it here? Pulling it up on the computer here. Where is it? Or digging through the dictionary. Geez, I can't. It'll take a second to pull up. But basically, a driver is a transport of goods. It's not, so when a cop says to you and he pulls you over, he says, "Where are you driving today?" If you tell him that you're driving, well, then you've just consented that you're participating in a commercial activity. Whereas even in the international treaties, it says that a man or a woman cannot be inhibited from traveling. It is a man and woman's God-given right to travel freely, to move from point A to point B freely. But when the legal system tells you that you're driving, you accept that, because in common parlance, you think driving is to just get in your car and go. But that's not what it is. It's actually to partake in a commercial enterprise, to move commercial goods. And that birth certificate of yours is what you're moving, because that birth certificate, that all capital letters name, is a commercial entity, and you're transporting. You are the agent. You're the trustee that's transporting this commercial entity. That's how it works.
That good. That's your name.
It's amazing. It's amazing. This is the Matrix. You know, this is what I believe. You know, a lot of people have seen that movie, The Matrix. Maybe young people today haven't seen it because it is quite old now, but it's like 20 years old, I think. But you know, that proverbial scene when he pulls himself out of the machine and he sees the machine. That's what it is. And for me, when I woke up and I first read my birth certificate that says revenue receipt for treasury use only on the back of my birth certificate, That was a wake-up call. And then on the back of my driver's license, it says, this is the property of the Motor Vehicles Act. It is not my property. So if a cop pulls me over and asks for my driver's license, he says, is this yours? It's, no, dude, that's yours. You work for the Motor Vehicles Act, not me. Amazing.
I remember that. They asked that question. That's a good one.
It's amazing. This stuff is just, you know, it's a rabbit hole, and I'll, you know, there's sometimes I spend so much time, you know, it's really all I do in my free time when I'm not either doing my work, creating content, working on my tools company, or any of the things that I do, my family obligations, whatnot. It's I just research law, and it's so funny. I never ever imagined being so obsessed with something that seems so mundane. You know, like if you would have asked me 10 years ago, would I have any interest in law? I just think about, I have some friends that are lawyers, and I just like, oh my God, this sounds so boring. And but it is, I'm telling you, man.
It's twisted, and you're right. The words are twisted. The meanings are different. I've seen that myself. So you can't just assume you know what that means unless you've got the wherewithal, like you do with your Black's Dictionary there. So, yeah, what I like to do is I like to tell people in a stretch, in a way to take back the power and the sovereignty, is that this is your main vote right here. It's how you spend your money, whatever it is, be it a Bitcoin, a dollar, or whatever. Spend your money to vote on local services and goods. I mean, what we're seeing, you know, we're seeing it with the farm, Curtis, but we're also seeing it across the board in other small businesses. I mean, this pandemic shut down small businesses in droves. Some of them are trying to get back up on their feet, but the riots are burning a lot of them. That's a death knell for a lot of
it's unbelievable
families. And some of these people don't realize what that really means. But, you know, my mother had a shoe store when I was a kid, and she had to buy shoes on credit, inventory on credit, which is often done with the expectation of selling and making a profit. But the economy tanked, and she was held holding a bill, and she lost her house. She lost her home. And a lot of people don't realize, you know, that a lot of people, these businesses make all this money. Only 1 in 7 businesses survive 7 years.
Oh, it's
yeah. People
Most
take an
fail.
enormous risk starting a business.
Huge.
They work their tuchuses off. They work, if they're not working 80 hours a week, then, you know, they're not doing anything. Business owners really work hard, and Curtis, I know you do. A lot of people don't appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears that people put in to make these things go. So I don't have any problem with small business making a profit, but you know, but usually the profit margins are really meager. And a lot of people come in like a lot of workers. They think, well, you know, hey, I make this money. I just sit on my fanny and don't have to do anything. I should just get this money for being here. And, you know, they're actually costing you money when they do that. And if you don't have much margin, they'll put you out of business.
Yeah.
You got to have, the work ethic is gone today. And I've done some videos on that. I've talked about our nation's disintegration. Yeah, let me stop for just a second. What I would like to do, just for a moment, is say I'm going to put links to your book and below this channel and to your channel, so that people can subscribe to you, but also support my channel. I like for people to check my links. My worm farm, I've had to shut it down temporarily due to personal circumstances. I've got a lot going on right now. It will be coming back online not too distant future. If I can trust the post office to get anything delivered in time, that's another concern. It's really breaking down. That said, I do have links for people. Hey, if you want to buy seeds, right now it's still a good time to plant. And I have links to True Leaf Market. If you're not growing your own garden, I'm sure Curtis will tell you, grow your own food. That's what we're talking about here, right, Curtis?
You're not growing your own food right now. You're nuts.
Exactly.
We're coming into some hard times, man.
Amen. That's what I'm trying to tell people. There may not be food available, so you better be growing your own food. So do everything you can in your power to grow your own food. And you can grow in your living room. If you live in the city, you can still grow food. Look at my videos on growing microgreens. And Curtis is also the dean on growing microgreens. He has definitely grown them. Now, all that said, also I have links to prepwithgreg.com, which you can go into that, and then through that go into my Patriot Supply through that link, and I get credit for that. In fact, that's a little bit. I give them a little better percentage than True Leaf Market, but it's planting season. That's why I'm talking True Leaf Market more right now. All that said, talking about seeds, Curtis, I just ate a couple of cherries. And so I'm going to pull up this cherry pit right here. Yep, it's kind of messy because I just ate cherry. There's nothing nice and neat about a cherry pit, right? But that is a seed. Now,
Yeah.
centralized systems. You take I'm a contractor. I work as a contractor supporting NASA through a company. I'm a direct support contractor, which means I got the email of NASA and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not NASA. I do not speak for them. I don't even speak for my company. I just speak for Greg Allison. Let me claim on that. Okay. That said, a government program is a centralized program. So government decides they want to do something like build a space shuttle or build, you want to go to space. You build a space shuttle or a space launch system. Of course, companies also build rockets, and that's a lot more interesting now. Getting more organic as we're getting more diversity in that. But just imagine you put everything you've got into one thing, and like one rocket. That's a government approach, one system. Well, now imagine if in Mother Nature, everything was put into development one seed. Curtis, could you imagine planting your farm out with one seed?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Everything this system is doing now, well, it has been doing it for a long time, and trying to do more of it is to centralize, and it is everything that nature doesn't do. And it's quite amazing, even when you talk about space. And I've never been to space, and but you look up in the heavens and you don't see straight rows, and you don't see nature never expresses itself in a way that looks that way.
Tell you a secret. Earth's in space, or you're actually in space, you just don't know it.
But you don't see these things. It does. Nature never expresses itself that way, and it's quite amazing to me how, especially you see it with the medical system so much, especially in the last 6 months with this whole vaccine thing and just this fear of this, that we've got this virus that has a 0.03 death rate. And then you've got all these big politicians and billionaires saying that life isn't going to go back to normal until we get a vaccine. So it's like, wait a second. So I've got a 99.97 chance of surviving, but you're telling me I need a vaccine? It's absolutely insane. It is.
Let's look at that a little closer, Curtis. You mentioned the world's billionaires, and one of them in particular is especially known for calling them this. Look who lost money in this recent pandemic, and look who made money. You realize that the world's billionaires have made something like $500 billion? Oh,
yeah.
While everybody else, the smaller guys, are getting put out of business. Power is going to the center.
Of course, and it's the same old scam. It's unbelievable to me that more people can't see it. I mean, I definitely see a lot of people waking up, so I got to give those people credit. And people waking up that I would say 6 months ago weren't awake, but people are waking up. And but it is amazing to me that more people just can't put two and two together, that the establishment has wanted to choke out small businesses forever. Kind of like this, for the same reason they want to choke out the small farm or the family farm, is that when you have, or choke out the family unit, right? We've all seen this endless push with the mainstream media and the deep state to break up the family unit, because that is the true state. Like you want to talk about a state or a government, they all exist in different ways. Like I would say for myself politically, the bigger the government, I'm more of a libertarian. The smaller the government, hey, I'm a fascist dictator, but I'm a benevolent dictator. In our family, my wife and I, we're a fascist, we're a communist dictatorship, but that dictatorship is accountable to itself. And this is kind of where I like to think about the state of being, because the state of being goes all the way back down to the individual man or woman, and it expands outward. And I like to think about those methods of control should loosen the larger it gets. But that's not what's happened over the last 2,000 years. What's happened is they've tried to go against what naturally would happen in natural groups of human beings. Like human beings do very well in small communities, and in those communities, I'm all for communism. If I had a community of 100 people, we lived on a piece of land, we were sovereign on that land, and we said, you know what? We're gonna take care of everybody. We're gonna make sure that if anybody's kids are sick or anybody's hurt or are elderly, we're going to take care of all of them. And we're going to put all of our resources together to do that. And that's manageable on a small level, but it's not on this large scale. It doesn't matter how much technology they throw at it. And it is quite amazing, because we are in such a technological era that despite all that technology, they can't even, this controlling thing just doesn't work. It continuously consumes itself. And it just goes to show you how by its nature it's such a failure, and it's never going to work. If it can't work now with all the systems that they have, are they waiting for the AI system for it to work? I don't think we're going to get that far.
Put the neural lace in your head, insert it in you, so then you're mind control robot.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all farming, right? It's just more.
We're the crop.
We're the crop. It's agriculture. Somebody's always being farmed, We don't really realize it. Who knows who's farming these guys? The Podestas and the Obamas. Who knows who's farming these guys? But it's that
who is
pyramid,
farming?
right? Who knows?
Big question. Scary question.
It's above my pay grade, that one. But I like to philosophize on it. I like to think about it. But at the end of the day,
it's probably beyond the scope of our channels together.
Well, probably, but you can go down a rabbit hole on all these subjects, but at the end of the day, my resolve has never changed. I've been doing the same thing, even though my political and worldviews have changed significantly. I've pretty much done a 180. I used to be very left-wing liberal, lived in the city of Montreal, which is very, very liberal city, to being, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't want to say I'm right-wing, because I think the both wings are, there's a lot of BS in it all. It's all part of the same bird. But I've done a complete 180. But my resolve has not changed. Grow food, decentralize, diversify, build your skills, build your community, hunker down on social equity, get to know your neighbors, because at the end of the day, you can lose all this stuff. And that's why, a lot of these prepper guys that I know, or money guys like Mike Maloney and Max Kaiser and Gerald Salente and Peter Schiff and guys like this, all these sound money guys, Ron Paul, they really get into, gold and all this stuff, and all those things are good. But at the end of the day, if you're the guy who's the unsavory character with all the gold living in the house on the hill, and times are tough, all that gold doesn't really mean anything if you don't have any relationships and don't have any love amongst your brothers and sisters. Then it's all for nothing. So for me, one big of the biggest part of the prepper movement is the social equity, is the building the relationships.
Now you're hitting on one of the topics that I've been really driving lately, and that is the notion of how you survive to get through the tough times ahead. And a lot of people are what we call lawn preppers. They think, I got my beans, I got my bullets, I can get through this. I got it made, I got it covered. Or I got my, my pile of gold. And, you can't eat the gold. And, you might be able to go out and hunt with your big bullets. Most of these people got large game rifles, and they think they're going to go out and hunt deer for them for the year. And what they're going to discover is they're going to starve to death in just a matter of a couple of months, because all the big game will get wiped out almost instantaneously. And you can't shoot a small varmint with a big game rifle and have anything but a puff of fur. There'd be nothing to eat unless you like to eat hair. Eating hair is not very helpful to beneficial to the human digestive system. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
So their model is flawed. They have to face the idea of what happens if they break a leg, get sick. What happens if hey, you might be the best in the West at popping balloons at the county fair, but when it's successive gangs trying to beat your door in, they only got to get lucky one time to get you. You've only got to be off your game one time. And sooner or later, your luck's going to run out. The only way to survive is to band together, to form communities, to form tribes, if you will.
Yep,
absolutely. I would say the tribe is the ultimate form of human governance. That's how humanity survived through most of the known era of humanity until this artificial thing called a nation state was invented in summer.
That's right. That's right.
And the nation state, was all about control. Let's take these people and we'll put them in monoculture agriculture, or growing crops, and we'll put them to slave to build monuments and things for the king. And then we'll employ him in armies to fight off all the other people or to go invade lands or whatever it was. And so warfare, big warfare came into play. And, there was always little tribal warfares and things like that. But you look at the history of nation states, the warfare got amped up, everything else. And it's just been going more and more toward more centralized control, as you've observed. But if you take humanity and put us back into nature, you don't need all that. And
yeah, and I think this system, as you described, is bursting at the seams. I can't say that there's a direct correlation to what's happening now with this race war BS, which is totally fabricated. Though there is legitimate concern for people who have been abused by the police, it's too bad that we can't all unite and just say the problem is not. Well, there is a problem with racism. There's no question about that. Right. But the real problem is the government has too much power. What gives one man with a blue suit the authority to murder another man in cold blood and not be accountable? That's the real issue.
Everybody should be accountable.
Everybody should be accountable. And it seems to me, at least the feeling I get, is that this whole system is bursting at the seams because this is nature or God telling us that you can't keep going this way. It's not. It doesn't work. And we are part of nature.
Yes, absolutely. That's what our people is. We are.
We're part of nature, and we got to come back to that. We got to come back to that realization, and hopefully that can be a really unifying message for anybody. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you're into. We can all kind of come together on that and realize that this whole, I love the way you put it, stack and pack along the railroad track.
Stack and stack along the railroad track on the way to the smokestack.
On the way to the smokestack. I love that.
Once they deemed you to be a useless eater, guess where you're heading?
Yeah, exactly. And
that's their terminology, useless eater. They're
useless eaters. I know. That's why Mr. Gates and all these cronies want to vaccinate Africa, is because they literally call these people useless eaters. And the Rockefellers have been saying that forever. Huh? Absolutely. Rockefellers have been saying stuff like that for 100 years on the record, saying these kinds of things. And it's absolutely sickening to.
In all fairness, though, we have to be able to understand the rose-colored glasses through which everybody else sees the world, their own worldview. And once they have a worldview, the rose-colored glasses reinforce everything they see and interpret it that way. So there's a lot of really divergent worldviews today, and we've got to make peace among them. So,
yes. Yeah.
So that's really what we've got to do, is to reach out to other people, reach across the aisles of race and creed and whatever else to the people of these different worldviews. We've got to find a way to make peace. Because, Curtis, here's the truth. With the proliferation of technology, which is unavoidable, if we don't learn to get along in this world, we're not going to survive. We'll wipe ourselves out. Have you ever seen the Forbidden Planet movie?
No.
The Krell was the most advanced civilization ever out in outer space on this planet called Altair or something or another. And they wiped themselves out in the night, one single night, when they achieved this ultimate technology. Honestly, we could do it way before we achieve a technology like that. And it's been outlined in this book by Sir Martin Rees, Our Final Hour. He's the Astronomer Royal of Great Britain. And he also, actually United Kingdom, I should say. He wrote this book like 10 years ago or longer now. And actually, by the way, I found out the paperback of this is running for $1,000 now. I got hardback.
Crazy.
But he lays out how through bioterror or something like that, we'll wipe ourselves out because the technology of mass destruction is proliferating, and it's almost the point that small groups can do things out of a garage or out of their own systems to develop weapons that can wipe us out. If we have all this hatred in the world continuing, and right now what we're doing overseas, what people are doing here, all we're doing is fanning the flames of hatred. Now, people may think it's going to achieve some kind of justice in the end, but no, you're just making the hatred deeper, and we're digging the pit that can lead us down the abyss of non-existence.
Yeah.
Maybe some people would like that, but we've got to heal this. We've got to have love, and we've got to, as you said, become part of nature. Nature bath is one of the best ways for people to get a peaceful sense to connect with nature, and it washes a lot of this out of us. And we've got to reach out to our fellow man, a fellow woman with love to try to overcome this. And I know it's hard to do when you've got some angst against them. Well, they did this or we did that. Well, we got to see through that. Put yourself in their shoes. Wear their rose-colored glasses for a little bit. Try to see things as they sit. You may not believe they're correct, but they do. In their perception, they're entirely correct. And you got to understand it. So you got to figure out, how do you communicate with? Imagine if it's your own child that has a philosophy that's radically opposed to what you believe. How would you deal with that child? How would you try to bring them around? Maybe they would bring you around. But you know, who's right, who's wrong. But the thing is, we're in a very dangerous spot in our world. If we're going to survive, we've got to learn how to do this. We've got to come through this and get the peace established, because we cannot survive all this hatred.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, I hope that people realize too, because often books, I haven't read that book and I'm not familiar with that author, but I do know, I read a lot of these type of scientist guys back in my environmentalist days, and their solution is always big government, right? Their solution. Oh, that's good, because their solution, I've heard a hypothesis like that many times, and the solution is always you got to regulate that out of existence. And I think what you said is it doesn't work. It doesn't work. We're continuously finding that.
Okay, there are some, Curtis. There are some that would believe, and I can see this being some justification for where they're trying to hurt us. Some would believe because we're independent, because that creates the danger, because we're all walking around like little missiles, that we could create all kinds of destruction, and we all need to come under complete, total control. So put the jack in your head, you know, and let the neural lace, you know, grow into your neural network inside your brain, your dendritic network, which looks like a fungal mat in the forest floor, right?
It does.
Or the galaxies and
the dark matter in the galaxies. Absolutely, it's fascinating, those correlations.
So it's all a dendritic looking network. That's the way Mother Nature works, and it's communicating massively, not singular. But we don't need that level of control. It may they would introduce us to us as it's an enhancement of several orders of magnitude. You know, maybe they can speed your thought process up 1,000 times. You can do a year's work in 2 hours, or it's going to be required to have access to your company, your work, because now they know really who you are, and you can't have identity stuff. But it's an absolute back door to taking complete control of you, who you are, and taking your soul and turning you into the ultimate mind-numbed robot ant worker. If they decide you're worthy to keep as an ant worker.
Yep.
You know, there are those things called Georgia Guidestones. Somebody thought those were important, even though you may, that's just some stones.
Those aren't too far from you. Have you ever gone down and checked those things out?
You know, I delivered worms to an address about a mile from those Guidestones, so I'm undermining them right now.
If I was near, I'd like to see it. I've seen them. I've looked at them online, but to go down there, and apparently they keep getting vandalized, and they can't remove the graffiti fast enough.
Well, Curtis, if you should ever get down this neighborhood, maybe we'll take a field trip over there.
Well, we'll see. You know, this year it looks like I won't be traveling to the U.S., but we'll see. You know, I always love getting down there. So
I was hoping to get one of your workshops in Smyrna, which is the closest we've gotten, but I've always, every time you've been there, I've just been socked in with so much to do, I couldn't get away for a week.
Well, I'm scheduled to speak at the Homesteaders, Doug and Stacy's Homesteader Conference down in where is it? That town that Huckleberry Finn was written in.
That's in Missouri, Hannibal, or
Hannibal, Missouri. Yeah, I'm supposed to be in Hannibal, Missouri in August, but I don't see. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get down there. So we'll see. I mean, fingers crossed.
That's still a fair hike for me, but it might be worth if I can get away. I've been so busy though. So one thing now, your model is really growing lettuce and salad greens, and that may be one advantage you have in the northern climate. That stuff is hard to grow here in the south where it's hot without putting shade cloth on and misting water or growing.
Yeah, I mean it's doable, but it is. But you know what? I have to tell you, like, I'm not farming the way I used to, right? Like everything I've written in the Urban Farmer, which is 10 years of my life, I'm not farming that way anymore. The way I'm farming right now is I'm growing long season storage crops, and I'm gardening like crazy. You know, I garden my entire property here at home. My quarter acre is all garden veggies and everything. But I have another half acre that just about a 10-minute drive from my house that I've got 6 greenhouses up there. We're doing all kinds of storage crops because we're preparing for food shortages and a tough economic go. And so that's kind of the farm. That's the farming I'm doing right now. I took a break from commercial farming 2 years ago, but I just
Yeah, I
jumped.
remember that. I remember that.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that you went into, well, you went into teaching and people, and I can understand that. There's actually more money in teaching people when you reach the level that you're at.
Well, there's certainly more money in it, but it just became
And it helps
a
more
time thing, you know. It became, I had so many other things going on that
people know that.
my farm was getting harder and harder. Like I'd be in another country and I'd be micromanaging my farm, and it became really hard to do.
Well, I faced that. I've got a lot of hardship in that. You know, of course, you went around and tell people, just concentrate on one thing. And I broke that rule from the get-go by starting a worm farm and a commercial farm and an aquaponics greenhouse. And, I realized that the nuttiness of that, and I knew it from the inception, but I've got a grander plan, a grander scheme where all this stuff fits together that I'm trying to develop. So there is madness to my method, or something along that order.
Yeah.
But I'll show you a little bit of that in a minute. But I'm kind of losing track of where I was going here. So you quit the urban farming for a while. You went on this teaching thing, and now you've got another farm. But what I was going to say is this: I'm doing something similar. My market garden right now consists of 2 primary crops: elephant garlic, which I can grow in the winter, by the way, so I can definitely crop 2 crops that way, and turmeric. Both are medicinal. Turmeric.
Interesting.
Both
Yeah.
are medicinal. I can do it where they don't require as much labor from me. It's easy for me to sell it. Either I can ship it if I desire, but I've not really had, a lot of people are begging me to ship turmeric, and I'm really not wanting to do that right now. But I can sell it and make a little better profit margin at the farmer's market, because shipping is just, shipping costs have gone through the roof. And, the post office the reliability is dropped like a rock. I don't know, especially this summer, I may wait till the fall before I return to selling worms, even if I'm able to. I may wait, just because with the unreliability of the post office, and you add that to the heat of the summer, it's just not a desirable thing.
Interesting.
So I've got a lot of people want to buy worms from me, and people are bugging me to death to sell them worms. And I just, well, for one, I've had some personal emergencies I'm still working to take care of. In addition to the loss of my dad and brother. Oh, by the way, my brother, did die of COVID-19. It's a real disease.
Oh, it's a real disease. I never said it wasn't.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah.
I know.
My son and my wife had it too, actually, and they were fine. But yeah, it's a real disease.
Yeah, it's a real disease. But it's the reaction to it to tell us that nobody can go back to work until we've had that.
It's insane.
Well,
we've had worse diseases before that have come through society and civilization.
we may get worse in the future, because there are, if nothing else, at least it may have got us a little training, because there are human transmissible bird flu viruses in existence in 2 laboratories on Earth, one in the Netherlands and one in Indonesia. And that really invokes the notions of this book. If those should get loose, we're in trouble. There was airborne Ebola also. But I very much reject this idea that we have too many people on this world.
Oh, I reject that completely.
I completely
Right.
reject it. Some people, we have too many people. We can't sustain the number of people. We can't be connected to the land. We got to put everybody in the city. There's so many people. There's no room. There's no room for all this.
You could fit everybody in the world in Texas, and they could all have an acre of land. That's true. That's true. That's if you take all the people in the world, you could get everybody an acre of land, and they'd fit in Texas.
Well, let me show you something here. Let me do a share. Let's see. I don't want to mess it up here. Share screen. I want to bring up a concept I got here. Curtis, you may have seen this. If you've watched some of my presentations, I've taught this thing here. This is my concept here for a home you can live out of and make a living out of, that's scaled to the size of the Dervaes family home or farm in Pasadena, California, which is right next to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory practically. They live in Pasadena, California, which is basically Hollywood area. They're in the city. In their backyard on a tenth of an acre, they grew enough food for 4 adults. Now the father has passed away, so there's 3 adult, his 3 adult children are still living there, and they actually sell from this farm and make a living from it. Now they live simple. It's not, they're not making $100,000 a year probably like you do from a quarter of an acre because they got a tenth of an acre. But they now also run a CSA that they also incorporate stuff from other farms, so maybe they're doing a little better. But off of a tenth of an acre, Curtis, they make a living in a city, which is, it's just part of greater LA, Los Angeles, and they do it out of their backyard. Well, I got to think, so, well, how could you combine all that into your home? And see, because they've got their house, they've got their driveway, they got a garage, and roof of the garage, the roof of the house are unused. Some of the front yard is more of a, a socializing area. How do you combine all that into one package so that you can make the whole thing a tenth of an acre? So I come up with an idea of like an earthship on steroids. Now, it's not an earthship. It's not laid out the same way as the earthship, but it uses some of the same principles of thermal mass, which earthship didn't create the idea of using thermal mass. And I think maybe, Elliot Coleman talked about these gardens in France where they use these walls all over the place. I'm sure you know Elliot Coleman quite well. And you've seen him in your videos and books. That's right. He pioneered a 30-inch wide grow bed.
The 30-inch wide bed, yeah.
Yeah, Elliot Coleman's great. 4-season farming in Maine. I've spoke with him on occasion, and I really admire him too. So what they did was, for when they had the rural grand solar minimums in the past and really cold weather, they gardened inside of these cells of rock walls, and the thermal mass created microclimates that greatly enhanced their growth season without any greenhouse overhead. So if you built, I think the way I drew this to scale, this is actually a foot thick. It ought to be 2 foot thick. These are basically earth bags. That was my idea. Or you could ram earth, or you could do like earthships and pound tires. I don't care. I'm not specific. I'm not like Mike. What's his name? The garbage warrior.
Michael Reynolds. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got patents and trademarks over all his concepts, and you got to do it this way. Basically, I'm not the purest of that type. I'm saying the key things here are growing areas and thermal mass. Now, if you properly employ these together, you can create a home on a tenth of an acre that can easily support 4 people, and you would have lots of room in it. I mean, if you take a tenth of an acre say an acre is 43,560 square feet. I'm putting it in English terms because most of my listeners are American. So that's over 4,306, something like that, square feet for a tenth of an acre. You divide that in half, and I've got like 2 levels here, and each of these levels are over 2,000 square foot of living area, and I got us growing on the top of it. And I show a notional greenhouse, and I penciled that in because you could do it many different ways. You can make an arch, hoop, you can take it off. That's totally optional. I show a vent fan. It could be just open flap. Would be make more sense. But just the idea you vent it. I didn't go into great detail there. I'm showing that maybe you'd have an open as it comes down. You can collect rainwater inside. That's a lot more rainwater collecting area than earthship uses. And earthship, a lot of these earthships are out in the desert house where they only get 10 inches of rainwater per year. And like here where I'm at, we get 40 to 60 inches. I think right now it's more than that.
That's crazy. We get like 2
inches of rainwater per year.
Oh yeah, we're in a dry area here.
Well, this would give you more area than they have, so you could collect more rainwater, and you could even recycle it more than they do. They flush it away. I would support using composting toilets and other things to make even more recycling than they do in those homes. And part of mine is a space habitat. So my idea is universal habitat. This idea is you can use this anywhere on Earth or in space even. And that's my space concept for it. I'll get back to that in a minute.
I don't have too much more time. I can hear my wife getting dinner ready for us. So
Okay. So we'll wrap up
fairly soon.
Yeah. This is the concept. The basic thing about this is that if you can take the entire future projected population of the UN of 9 billion people, and let me get out of this thing. And I don't want to hit the wrong button here. I'm going to hit escape. We'll end that presentation. I'll stop the share. Give me a minute here. There we go. So the whole idea is people talking to me, people, you could live off the land out of that, live out of that home, produce almost all your food. You could have a shop underneath that you could produce other goods, 3D printing, grow mushrooms, worms, whatever, microgreens, or whatever. And you could put the entire projected population of the world by the UN of 9 billion people in homes like that comfortably own an area the size of Texas and New Mexico, or half of Alaska. I would never put all the people in one spot on Earth. But this whole idea there's too many people is totally bogus. I mean, in homes like that, people would be very self-sufficient, very sovereign. So that is ultimately something I'm working to develop, and I'm also working to develop a network of tribes. And I would like for, you know, I would hope that a lot of them would adopt similar type habitats. I'm planning to do that here locally. I am requesting people to email me HAL5Space. I'll put the link in this below this video. HAL5SPACE at AOL.com. And we're collecting names for people that are interested in joining tribes. So we're trying to develop a network, Curtis nationwide, of people that are interested in this. So I'm being proactive. I'm actually trying to do something, and I've got somebody help me. I've got an assistant, and with that, we're trying to make a big difference. Now, there's a couple of people I've not responded to yet because I'm going to talk to them personally, and it takes time. But it's basically HAL, the Arabic numeral 5. I'm writing kind of things, SPACE at AOL.com. But the link will be below. Yes, you see why I can't read my own hand scratching sometimes. I can draw pretty good, believe it or not. So there are solutions. Vote with your dollar or whatever coin you have. Vote with your own money for local vendors, for local farmers. Go to your farmers market, support community-supported agriculture, go directly to your farmers, use small tradesmen, artisans, the small individual plumbers, repairmen as much as you can. And so the bigger companies, I would say, do everything you can locally as much as possible. And that way, we are reinforcing the individual sovereignty of people. Support people, not dead corporations. Help people. And I've been
absolutely.
Ernest, I've been talking that for months on my videos. So when I heard you hitting on it, I thought, yeah, you're singing my language. So that really thrilled me, Curtis. That really did. That's why I put a comment on your video. I said, this is your best video yet. And you put out a lot of really excellent videos. They're all good.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
I love your channel. I love your book. I love what you do, what you stand for, who you are. You are a guy who puts the rubber to the road. You talk the talk and walk the walk. Curtis Stone is real, people, and he's solid as stone. You don't get more real than Curtis.
That's awesome, Greg. Well, I appreciate that, man, and thanks for having me. And we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, we'll talk some farming topics and maybe talk some other stuff. But Curtis, I really appreciate what you're doing. And I'd be happy to be a guest on your show if you ever do guest shows or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Cover worm farming, or we can talk stuff like this, whatever you'd like. But Curtis, I thank you for what you're doing. I'm going to end the recording. We might say a word or two afterwards. But I want to thank everyone for watching. And just so that you will know that you kind of watched to the end, say, hey, I like Curtis's rose-colored glasses. The way he sees it.
Right on, Greg.
Thing like that in here. All right, let me stop the record. Everyone, I really appreciate y'all for watching. Thank you very much.